Hello everyone. So our next learning episode in probability and statistics is about mean, variance, and standard deviation of discrete probability distribution. To start with, these are our lesson objectives and at the same time our lesson competency. It is at the end of this learning episode, you're expected to illustrate the mean, variance, and standard deviation of a discrete random variable, and of course, to calculate them. Next, let's have this one. Before we're going to compute for the mean, variance, and standard deviation, let's take a look first at the graph, which represents the probability distribution, and we call that one as the histogram. Histogram looks like this. For example, you are given a probability distribution which has a value of x that is equal to 0, 1, 2, 3 random variables, and their corresponding probabilities are 1, 8, 3, 8, 3, 8, and 1, 8. To illustrate the histogram, it is always that you put the random variable in your horizontal line or your x-axis. Kaya yung 0, 1, 2, 3 dito, nandito siya sa horizontal line or your x-axis. And your probability of x is nasa y-axis or your vertical line. Kaya dito, meron tayong p of x. So, 0, 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4. And then, ipa-plot mo na lang. So, 0 and 1, 8. So, dito siya banda. 1 and 3, 8 dyan, 2 and 3, 8, and then 3 and 1, 8. Yan. So, that's how histogram works for probability distribution tables. Next, let's move on now to the mean for discrete probability distribution. So, for the mean of discrete probability distribution, we'll have this symbol that is mu, or we'll just read it as mean, that is equal to this letter E, capital E na malaki, is read as summation. Summation of the product of your random variable and your probability of your random variable. The summation of x times p of x. Again, your x here represents the values of your random variable, and your p of x are the corresponding probabilities. Let's have an example to apply this formula for the mean. So, rolling a die, what is the average number of spots that would appear? The first column would be your random variable. So, when you roll a die, you will have a possible outcome that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Same true with the random variable. So, the random variables are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And what's the probability? So, if in the problem, kapag hindi given yung probability niya, kayo na ang kumuha ng probability ng random variable na yan. Paano nga ulit kumuha? So, you have your, what's the chance that you will have a random variable 1 out of all your possible outcomes? So, ilan beses lumabas ang 1? So, isa. 1 out of ilan lahat? 6. So, 1 over 6. Same true with 2. So, ilan ang 2 dito out of all these possible outcomes? So, isa lang. So, that is 1 over 6 also. Same true with 3, 4, 5, and 6. And then the third column is, we'll now have the product of your first column and second column. Because if we get its sum, automatic that's your mean. So, first, get the product of your first column and second column. So, you have 1 times 1, 6 is equal to 1 over 6 pa rin. 2 times 1, 6, that's 2 over 6. 3 times 1, 6, that's 3 over 6. 4 times 1, 6, 4 over 6. 5 over 6, and 6 over 6. I do not encourage you to have it in simplest term para mas madaling mag-add. Okay? Kasi if you have the same denominator, if you're adding fractions with the same denominator, all you have to do is to add the numerator and simply copy the common denominator. So, you'll have 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 plus 6 divided by 6. So, their sum is 21 over 6. If you divide 21 divided by 6, you'll get the mean that is equal to 3.5. That's the mean or the average number of spots that would appear in rolling a die. So that's how you apply the formula for the mean of discrete probability distribution. Let's have our example number 2. The probabilities that a customer will buy 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 items in a grocery store are 310, 110, 110, 210, and 310 respectively. What is the average number of items that a customer will buy? In here, yung problem, binigay na sa'yo yung random variables and at the same time, binigay na rin sa'yo yung probabilities ng random variables na yon. So, sabi dito, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 items. So, that will be your random variables. So, lalagay mo na lang, kokopyahin mo na lang, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Ang sabi, the probabilities that a customer will buy these 1 to 5 items in a grocery store are. So, yung probability daw nila ay 310, 110, 110, 210, and 310. So, yung customer, pag nagbumili ng isang item, ito yung probability niya. Pag bumili ng dalawang item, ito naman yung probability. So, we have number of items. Ang probability niya ay 3 over 10. 2 items, 1 over 10, 3 items, so 1 over 10, and so on up to 5 items. So, for the average number of items that the customer will buy, all you have to do is to multiply the first column, random variable, and the second column, probability of x, and get its sum. So, 1 times 310, that is equivalent to 3 over 10. 2 times 110, that's equivalent to 2 over 10. 3 times 110, you have 3 over 10, 8 over 10, and 15 over 10. Again, get the sum of your third column or the product of your random variable and probability of x. That would be your mean of discrete probability distribution. So you have 3 plus 2 plus 3 plus 8 plus 15. Divide by 10. Again, you only add the numerator since they have a common denominator. So, simply copy the common denominator. So, simply add using your calculator or using your mind. So, you have 31 over 10. 31 divided by 10, that's equivalent to 3.1. And that's the answer to our problem, which is actually the average number of items that a customer will buy, that is equal to 3.1. Let's move on to the standard deviation and the variance. So for standard deviation and variance, when we talk about standard deviation, we are talking about the measures of how far a set of random numbers are spread out from their mean. Ibig sabihin, gaano kalayo yung mga random variables from their mean. The variance is the average of the squared differences from the mean. The variance and standard deviation describe the amount of spread, dispersion, or variability of the items in a distribution. So, for the formula, I will give you two methods. Okay, so let me discuss first the first method on how we compute for the variance and standard deviation of a discrete probability distribution. Again, for the mean, walang nagbago, same pa rin kanina as we've discussed earlier. So in here, the variance is summation, that is summation of the quantity x minus mean squared times the probability of x. Your symbol for variance is like this. Okay, that's phi squared. PHI, that's a Greek symbol. Phi squared, that's variance. We read it as variance. For the standard deviation, all you have to do is to get the square root of your variance. So for example, the value of your variance is 100. So to get the standard deviation, the square root of 100 is 10. So the standard deviation now is equal to 10. Okay, and vice versa, of course. If you are given the value of standard deviation, let's say the value of your standard deviation is 5 and you are getting for the variance, ang gagawin mo naman ay square mo naman siya. Pag sinabing square is, you multiply the value by itself. So, 5 times 5 is 25. That's your variance. Pag in-square root mo ang 25, yun ang standard deviation. Okay? So, the variables involved, you have your x, that's the value of your random variable. You have your mu, that's your mean. P of x, corresponding probability. Your E, that's your summation symbol, sigma. Next, here is our example. So, for example, let's say you are given this random variable x, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you are given a probability, P of x, you have 0.25, 0.35, 0.20, 0.15, and 0.04, and 0.01. The first step that you are going to do is to get the mean. In getting the mean, you have to multiply the first column and the second column, or your random variable and the corresponding probabilities. 0 times 0.25 is still 0. 1 times 0.35, that's equivalent to 0.35, and so on. If you get the sum of this third column, again, you will get your mean. So, your mean is equal now to 1.41. Again, inad lang natin ito para makuha yung mean. To get your variance, before arriving to the summation of the quantity x minus mean squared times p of x, kailangan muna natin ng separate na results for x minus mean. So, x minus mean muna, and then, yung sagot dito, x minus mean squared. Para makuha natin yung x minus mean squared times p of x. Times naman natin doon. Alright. So, x minus mean, meaning, so your first column minus your mean, that is equivalent to 1.41. So, each of your random variable minus 1.41. So, 0 minus 1.41, 1 minus 1.41, and so on up to 5 minus 1.41. So, 0 minus 1.41, that is equal to negative 1.41, and so on. Up to 5 minus 1.41, that is equal to 3.59. Alright. For step 3, yung step 2 mo times itself or squared. So, the quantity negative 1.41 squared, you'll notice lahat ng may negative dito magiging positive. So, negative 1.41 times itself, it will give you 1.9881. Negative 0.41 times negative 0.41, that is equivalent to 0.1681, and so on. Alright? And then for step 4, ang gagawin mo lang, whatever the results in step 3 times your probability of x. Saan makukuha to? Sa second column. So, meaning, your step 3, 1.9881 multiply by the values in your second column. So, mangyayari, 1.9881 times 0.25, that's equivalent to 0.4970. And so on up to 12.8881 times 0.01. That's equivalent to, or 0.1289. If you'll get the sum of your step 4, you will get the variance already, because again, the formula for variance is summation of the quantity x minus mean squared times p of x. So, pag inad mo to, ang makukuha mo is 1.4018, which is already your variance. Alright? So, mapapansin mo, para maka-arrive ka sa variance, ay meron kang 6 na column dito sa method 1. Para makuha yung standard deviation, whatever the value of your variance, just get the square root. So, anong square root ng 1.4018? Just punch your calculator and it will give you a value that is approximately 1.1839. And that's actually your standard deviation. Take note, yung symbol ng standard deviation, wala na yung square dito. So, that's the computation for the standard deviation and variance of discrete probability distribution using method 1.